Should you stop eating carbs after menopause? If you've spent any time on social media, you have probably heard carbs spike your blood sugar, carbs spike insulin, carbs cause belly fat. And once you hit menopause, you should eat as few carbs as possible. But then someone else tells you, right, you need to eat carbs to fuel your workouts, or you need them to support recovery or maintain energy. And so which is it? And the truth is, all these things can be true. And here's what I want you to understand is that you may not need to eat fewer carbs, but you may need to become more strategic about which carbs you're consuming more of, when you're eating those carbs, and what you eat them with. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, because the goal isn't to become afraid of carbohydrates, but the goal is to help teach your body how to handle them better. The goal is how to handle your carbs better. The real issue that we're dealing with at this stage in life regarding weight gain and weight loss resistance, right? We're struggling to lose that weight. Also, it's where the weight is showing up on our body. It changes, right? We start to be more, our weight starts to redistribute in menopause. And we tend to gain more weight around our middle. And so the instinct is, right? Oh my gosh, I have to cut all my calories back and go totally low carb. And of course, then it's exercise more, eat less. And this just isn't what the research shows to be the issue. The issue, why we're gaining weight, why we struggle to lose the weight, is hormonal. It is because of our hormones. And one quick example I want to give that I just heard Dr. Jason Fung talk about. He has some amazing books that I recommend that I've read. The Obesity Code, the Hunger Code are two really good ones, the Diabetes Code. And what we know and what his example is, think of a teenage boy, right? Eats as much as possible. I have a son who we just went on vacation and we go out for ice cream in the evening, right? And he gets this ginormous sundae and, he's got 9% body fat. He eats and eats and eats. But what is the difference between him and someone like me in postmenopause? Are hormones, right? He's got so much testosterone that is going to help him. His metabolism is much more that of a young man, whereas mine is a little different at this stage. So I just have to be reflective of that and eat accordingly and consume foods in a way that work for my body. And today specifically, when talking about carbohydrates, they have a purpose. They're delicious, right? They're nourishing and they help with so many factors in our lifestyle, right? Sleep. Carbohydrates can be a great source of both serotonin and melatonin, right? Energy, for sure. It can serve around our workouts, really well. Like we want to have some carbohydrate intake to fuel glucose, to fuel our muscle, to fuel those harder workouts. So we can have the energy to have the output, right? Because we want those workouts to be efficient and effective. We really want to pay attention to, again, what types of carbohydrates we're eating. We want to make sure we don't eat carbohydrates on their own, right? Think about when you go to a restaurant and what happens first is they bring you a bread basket. A lot of restaurants, a lot aren't doing that today. Or they bring you some kind of carby appetizer. And unfortunately, this is an issue for us. That doesn't work. It will spike our blood sugar. It will do that, right? That is when blood sugar is spiked. Insulin is going to be spiked. And it's going to cause more belly fat. Why? Because our hormones are responding. Hormone of what? Insulin. It's an insulin issue. weight loss at this time in our lives is all about insulin. And that's why a lot of women are going to GLP-1s. Why? Because taking a GLP-1 is going to impact your insulin and make you more insulin sensitive. Now, that can be super helpful for so many women. We also know we can do this through what we eat, when we eat, and of course, why we're eating, right? I hear so much around food noise, and how these medications are seriously helping so many women with food noise. But I would also say this, and just through my own experience of working with women who have both gone on a GLP-1, gone off of them, because that's a big issue today, from what I understand and what I'm hearing. I don't want to say nobody, but many women I work with do not want to stay on a GLP-1 medication. Why? Well, what I hear is mostly it's around a few of the side effects. The main one being not enjoying food. And food is something that as a human being is part of our life. We want to enjoy food. Food is around, gatherings, it's entertainment, it's celebration. It is a way we come together. So a lack of enjoyment around that simple human need can really take away from life. So I think it can be, I hear a lot of women say, it got me started. But then they come to me and say, help, because I don't want to regain the weight. And so whether you're going on a GLP-1, you're on a GLP-1, or you want to come off a GLP-1 medication, or you want to give this a go without the medication. Because what I help women with is that. How do we become insulin sensitive? Remember, weight gain around this time in our life is all because we are now insulin resistant. Meaning our body does not shuttle glucose in a way that fuels our body the way it used to. We have a lower tolerance for glucose, which is so important to understand. And again, a medication can help with that, meaning the GLP-1s, but we have to come to that root cause. What is causing us to eat? Why are we eating? Are we eating because, we've got a lot of noise saying, I'm bored, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm angry, I don't know what else to do, I need a distraction? Or is it real, honest to goodness, hunger in a disproportionate way? Like, in other words, are you hungry? Like you eat breakfast and you're hungry an hour later. That tells me it's a blood glucose issue. It's a blood sugar issue, right? Which comes back to that insulin resistance. This is probably what I see more times than not. Women who come in and they say, I eat and I'm still hungry, or I'm fasting, but then once I eat, I can't stop eating, or I don't eat. And then all of a sudden I'm starving and I eat everything and anything, or I'm a snacker. I just keep eating and eating, stopping over 12 hours of the day. And so these are some common things that I hear that can really influence not our inability to lose specifically body fat, and specifically around our midsection at this stage in life, right? We have to be able to get to the root cause, I believe, of why we're eating, why we are struggling with so much food noise. And one thing that I find in working with clients and myself is macronutrient timing, meaning, and today specifically talking about carbohydrates. So let's talk about what we're eating, right? First off, there are simple carbohydrates, meaning breads, pastas, muffins, cookies, all those things, right? Those super highly palatable foods, processed foods as well. But they can be healthy, but very high sugar content, meaning high glucose content. So when they hit our bloodstream, when we ingest them, they go, digest, hit our bloodstream right away, it's going to spike blood sugar. Remember, insulin resistance. These are connected, right? High blood sugar or high-low spikes is a real telltale sign. Now, glucose is not the same as insulin, but we can deduce, I guess, when you have a lower blood glucose fasting in the morning And then just a kind of, I think of like a kiddie ride roller coaster throughout the day versus the high-end roller coaster. You are going to be more likely to eat, stop eat, and stop eating. Or it might look like eat, stop eating, stop eating, eat, right? Depending on your bio-individuality and what your goals are, right? So obviously I'm putting in some fasting in between times we're eating. And I think that's an important piece of this is the ability to go for 3 to 4 hours without eating food during a day. That's a good sign to start with that you are progressing along a line of becoming more insulin sensitive, right? Because you're not needing to eat constantly, right? And hopefully the goal is when you become insulin sensitive through what you're eating, when you're eating, how you're eating, why you're eating, and where you're eating, those are my 5, right? You start to lose the food noise because you're not constantly hungry, right? You're not constantly searching out food. So that noise does quiet if we can get to this place. Now, how do we get there? How do we stop this without a medication, right? And again, it comes back to my 5, what we're eating, right? So I talk a lot about this, right? And today specifically carbohydrate timing. So with carbohydrates, we want to make sure that we are not eating them first, right? We don't want to sit down and eat a carb right off the bat. That is going to cause the blood sugar spike. So we want to focus again on protein and fiber and then having our carbs. Don't think of it like you have to wait 20 minutes to have your carbs, but you just want to, like something I'll do, let's say, is I'll have some greens, some salad, some veggies. Right, veggies, and then I'll have some protein with that. I'll kind of spend a little bit, maybe, I don't know how long, but I'll enjoy that, right? Veggies and protein. And then I'll add in maybe some sweet potatoes or even some quinoa, or at the end of the meal, I'll have some apple, or I'll have one of my protein brownie, or my muffins that I make, or even a couple of my, my cookies. I also like a gluten-free bagel once in a while. So I'll do that at the end of a meal, maybe a gluten-free tortilla or some rice or something like that. But I'm not going to avoid it. Another time that I'll have carbs is before a workout. Like I'm getting ready now to go do a strength workout. So I had my chia pudding with a small banana. And I know that is going to give me that energy that I need to be able to give my workout the most I can give it, right? And then after my workout, I'm also going to have some carbohydrates. So it comes down to the timing of when we're going to eat our carbs and in the order we're going to eat them. So timing around workouts is great. Another time a lot of people do really well with carbohydrates is having them at their last meal because it can also help induce melatonin. So some people do really well with having carbs at their last meal of the day because it helps them sleep better. So these are some things around when we're eating carbs and then, the timing of our carbs. Also the order, right? I talked about protein and fiber and then having, your carbs at the end of the meal, or definitely not the first thing. We don't want to come in, and a lot of times I hear this, like you'll come in from being a workout or being on errands or something, and the first thing, you go to is a carb. And this is something we want to really avoid. And it makes sense though, right? Because our brain is saying, I need fuel right away. And we know that glucose is the fastest pathway to get there, right? It's an immediate. So we want to have more of those slow burning carbohydrates. Naturally, again, this is a natural GLP-1, right? The more we can start eating that protein and fiber first, that's increasing satiety, right? So we're not hungry right away after a meal, or we're not gonna keep eating because we're going to be more full. So that's a natural GLP-1, okay? And so we want that, and it also is gonna slow some of that gastric emptying, right? That's the fullness. So again, that is one way to kind of induce that in a way that I help women coming off of the GLP-1. Also, going for a walk after you eat a meal is a great blood sugar stabilizer. You hear me talk about that quite a bit. So I do suggest after you're finished a meal or when you're at the end of the meal, just put on your shoes, go for a quick walk, because that's going to help you separate the meal and get the food noise out, right? Like move your body, blood sugar will come down, and that is what will help you not have all that noise, right? Because it's that those blood sugar up and downs that are causing that, I think. And we are emotionally conditioned in this world, right? Food is everywhere, messages are everywhere. So we have to acknowledge that. And so that can be noisy if we're listening or on our social media looking at recipes, food is everywhere. So it also comes back to some mindfulness around that. Are you meditating? I try to. I'm not the best at it, but I've started a practice where it's just really coming into our breath and letting everything else go, the noise, so to speak. And certainly some of us have emotional attachments to food, as I said in the beginning, like, we can be, eat because we're sad, we're upset, we're hungry, we're not hungry, right? It's all the other reasons beside hunger that we're eating. And that's just something to pay attention to. And will a medication help you avoid those feelings? Possibly. But could there be a deeper root cause that might need to be dealt with around why you're eating? And I think this is something that really gets, unfortunately, negated with the medications. We're not necessarily dealing with the root cause. And I say this not to everyone, because there are many women who are benefiting from going on these medications, even temporarily, and then getting guidance when they come off, for sure. But I think either way, we still want to be dealing with, is there something underneath that I'm running from? And the reason I say that is because I've had this experience in my life. I have not gone on a GLP-1 medication, but I have a history of, disordered eating and issues around why I'm eating. And I've had to work really hard to manage a lot of that. And so I think it's important, and maybe that's why I'm so passionate about this, is because for me, hearing so many women going on these GLP-1 medication drugs, it's so tempting. And a lot of women come to me and say, I don't know, maybe this is the answer. And I would say to those women, try this first. Maybe book a consultation with me. Let's talk through where you are. Maybe that is the route to go. And maybe it's a combination of that with coaching. Or maybe you try the coaching to become insulin sensitive, to learn how to take care of your body at this stage in life and see if we can do that. There have been lots of women that come in and they're, like I said, they're on the verge and they're like, I don't want to go there if I don't have to. And most of these women, keep in mind, are, want to lose that Menopause belly, and it's around between maybe 10 to 15 pounds. We're not talking someone who needs to lose 50 pounds and up, right? I do believe these drugs are super helpful for women with diabetes and those who have been struggling all your life. And, this can be a great option. So again, I just want to keep that caveat in there. I'm not completely but I think just to speak from my own experience and what I've worked through for years and years on my own journey and how I've been able to navigate and finally get to a place where what I eat, when I eat, how I eat, right? Where I'm eating and why I'm eating. Like that's a question. Am I hungry? Am I dehydrated? Am I stressed? Am I sad? Am I happy? Am I really, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but checking in instead of just reaching for. And I think those 5 kind of pillars of nutrition for me and a lot of my clients have helped them to get to a place where they've been able to lose the weight. They've been able to keep it off. And when I say weight, remember, I'm saying mostly body fat because we want to preserve muscle. That is above and beyond everything else. And the important thing here, even though I intended this to be all about carbohydrates, I tend to get into the bigger picture. So, I think that we need to really hone in on our own truth, kind of like what I've done here today, right? It's like, what's my truth? My truth is that I have had to really work hard on not overcoming, but because I think it's a journey, right? We're on this journey. We're never going to get there, but the joy is in the journey, right? And learning about ourselves and taking care of ourselves. So my journey of self-care, right? Taking care of myself, because there certainly were times I wasn't taking care of myself. And it may have even looked at like it on the outside, but I didn't understand what that was. And today, I believe I have a better understanding of what that looks like. And I've had to go through my own journey to get to a place where I now have a structure, right? I now feel confident and comfortable in my own skin and in my body. But it has to work for you. Right? I mean, I can tell you what works for me, but it may not work for you. And that's where coaching really is helpful. I have a coach. I have 2 coaches and a therapist, right? and groups that I'm part of, right? And why? Because I can't do this alone. I can try, but it comes down to speaking, being heard, being seen, being accountable. So important, being supported, because the truth is it's not an information problem. There is so much information out there. We know we can go online and see it all. And certainly I'm going to tell you, when you eat, why you eat, how you eat. Yeah, I'll tell you those things, but how do we put it into practice? And I think the only way we can do that is to be in conversation, to be with another human being. Oh yeah, by the way, you could do chat. But the other thing about that is, and you can even speak, but it's real-time feedback with a human being that creates change, at least for me and for the women I work with. So, I ran through, I'm going to recap here just for a second, because the goal was to talk about carbs and why carbs are not the enemy, right? They are not the enemy. But what kind of carbs we eat? Mostly we want to be eating whole food, fruits and vegetables, period. Now, the other foods are okay, and there's no bad foods unless they're moldy, right? Or poisonous. So just think then, not just what you're eating, but when you're eating them, right? Around your exercise is great. Maybe at your last meal to help you sleep well, because we know sleep is a critical piece in losing belly fat. And then also that's the timing. And then the order of when you're eating them, right? We want to make sure we're not eating them first. Think bread basket is our typical, right? We want to put the bread basket at the end of the meal, right? So if you want bread, ask them to bring it at the end of your meal. And then, so the order, we also, just to go on the order, the other thing is, don't eat carbs alone. Think of them like, you don't want them to be naked. No naked carbs. So let's say you're having an apple. Unless it's at the end of the meal, that's fine. But if you're just having an apple as a snack, maybe pair it with a handful of almonds or 3 Brazil nuts, even better. Great source of selenium. I love that. Good for thyroid health, by the way, selenium. Or a little bit, tablespoon of nut butter is fine. I like to do a little yogurt dip. So I'll do coconut yogurt with a half scoop of my favorite egg white powder, protein powder. And then I'll use apple slices for a dip. Delicious. So that's an option, right? We just don't want to eat them alone. What else did I mention? Carbs around exercise. So let's recap again. Strategy number 1, don't eat carbs alone, right? I talked about this. Maybe some apple with some nut butter is a great idea. We don't want to do that. Why? Because carbs alone will spike blood glucose, blood sugar, and we don't want that. Number 2, food order matters, right? So think about the order of your food. Think veggies and protein, bite, 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 bite. And then towards the end of your meal, have your carbs, okay? So that matters. Think bread basket at the end of a meal, right? So if you're out to eat and there's really good bread that you love and you really want to have it, ask them to bring it a little later in the meal after you've already had your protein and fiber. How about that idea? I never thought of that until just now. I might do that. Number 3, carbs around exercise. Really beneficial, right? We talked about this. Why? Because carbs give, we need glucose to fuel our muscles. And we want our muscles to be turned on, to work, right? Think about no carbs, lower energy, right? Lower metabolic change. Higher carbs, more energy, more metabolic change. Okay, so we want to eat carbs around our workouts, meaning before, not too close, like know your digestion, right? I'll do it about an hour before and then after. Okay, two timing, really effective as to when to eat your carbs. And then I talked about in the evening as well, right? I already did that, so don't worry about that right now. Walk after you eat. I talked a lot about this. 10-minute walk helps bring blood sugar down. Super important, right? Really helps, again, when our goal is to reduce that belly fat. So we don't want our food to just sit, right? We never want to just eat and then sit, because food is more likely to get stored that way. And our blood glucose may go up, and then we might want something else to eat and something else to eat. So remember those spikes, that high roller coaster, high up and downs, that is going to cause the hunger, the food noise, if you will, right? I need more food. I need more food. So these little strategies can help to alter that. Okay. Lastly, time of day matters. Okay. So a few things around when we're eating our carbs, meaning the time of day. And so when I think about this, I think about a clock, right? On a clock. We also have a body clock. So when the time of day that your body is kind of more metabolically active are between, this is Ayurvedic medicine, which I practice and use with my clients. We know that the pitta time of day, or the time when our fire is burning at its highest. Think about a fireplace with logs and a big fire. That's our internal, it's our metabolism, really. So that is between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Before that, right, that's a great time to get exercise in. And after 2 p.m. is when everything kind of starts to dwindle. So think about now the fire is starting to get quieter. The logs are burning, less fire, less sparks. Things are starting to come down. And so many of us, especially in America, we tend to eat our largest meal and go out to dinner in the evening. And that isn't necessarily the best time to be eating a lot of carbohydrates. Why? Well, remember I talked about fueling our workouts. Well, later in the evening, we're not probably going to be working out after we eat a large meal. And so it's super important to think about that when you're thinking about when to strategically have your carbs, those treats or enjoyable foods that you really like, because they're not bad, but most of us eat them later in the day. So something to think about, are you barely eating all day and then having your largest meal at, let's say, 9 p.m.? Or are most of your carbohydrates coming only at dinner? I spoke about having some carbohydrates at dinner, small amounts. Some people do this, it helps them sleep, right? But having too much carbohydrate at dinner, again, we're going to end up storing it as fat because the body cannot use it as fuel. That's really important. So the other thing to think about is a lot of us, if we wait to eat at the end of the day, we're going to keep eating, right? So after dinner, are you snacking right before bed? Are you tending to eat dessert like while you're watching TV and then going to bed? Think about these calories are not being used. We don't need extra calories necessarily to sleep, right? Sleeping is actually a great time for fat burning. It is when our body is burning the most fat for fuel. So for me personally, and a way I work with clients is I say, please stop eating at least 3 hours before bedtime. That way your food is digesting, your body isn't struggling to digest food, and sleep, right? We can't do those two things efficiently, especially after menopause. Because why? Our digestion slows way down, and we need more time before we go to sleep to digest our food, which is also why I love a walk after dinner. That helps aid digestion. So it is important, and it can be really challenging if we're used to eating more at the end of the day and less at the top of the day. That's where I start with a lot of women, because in this culture, this is what we're programmed, the way we're programmed to eat. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy going out to dinner or time with friends or any of these things you enjoy. It just means we have to kind of negotiate a little differently during the day and how we're gonna, move into that social situation. Because that's more important than anything, to be honest. We have to be social. It is one of the number one precursors to longevity is being amongst others. So don't stop that, but we can certainly work with that. So, so I've talked about a lot today, and hopefully you're going to get a nugget out of this, and it's going to be somewhat cohesive in my messaging. But, I think when we think about when should I eat carbs, I think a simple answer is carbohydrates can be a part of balanced meals. I love pairing them at the end of a meal with protein and fiber, as I talked about. I also love to use carbohydrates around my activity, my exercise. And when blood sugar regulation is a concern, I pay attention to how much food is being pushed late into the evening, right? So that can really influence back to insulin resistance. When we're spending a lot of our carbohydrate, a lot of our food at the end of the day, that is going to have an impact on our sleep, which is going to impact blood sugar, which is going to impact insulin sensitivity. So again, this is where we start. We have to kind of look at what's going on and then come up with a plan. That's all. But we have to kind of go in and take an inventory. What's happening? What are your main concerns around this? And then let's do a step-by-step plan to help you achieve your goals, right? If you want to lose 10, 15 pounds of belly fat, it is very, very doable when we focus on what we're eating, why we're eating, when we're eating, how we're eating, and where we're eating, right? And then mix in some good complementary exercise, work on sleep hygiene, stress management, and you can do this, right? I see women do this every day, and it's so exciting, and it's long-term. That's the goal, right? To live a long, healthy life. And remember, weight loss does not equal health. So my goal and my focus for you, for myself, for all the women I work with is health and longevity versus being as tiny as we possibly can, right? So it's the whole picture. And that can happen with a GLP-1 drug if that's what you need. Again, if you're in that category, yes, it is a tool, but it is just that. It is a tool in our toolbox, along with all the things I work with you on. It can be complementary if it is something you need, right? Or if it's something you want to do for a little bit of time and then go off of it. But I think having that support, like I talked about, support, accountability, ability to be seen, to be heard, and to be able to be mirrored. I think that is one thing that in my work, I feel like a lot of times I am just simply a mirror, and I give back what you're sharing with me, what you need. And based on my expertise, my education, and my experience of working with so many women in this space and being able to watch them grow and change. Unbelievable. I mean, it is believable, but it's so exciting and so amazing. I feel it's a gift for me to watch and be a part of. Yeah. So that's enough about that. I've talked about belly fat, right? That, let's not forget though, for fat loss, it still matters how much energy you're taking in. I'm not going to say that doesn't matter. Protein matters, muscle matters. Protein without muscle, not so much. They're just calories, right? Your muscle is not going, we need to have the stimulus to use the protein. Just so we're clear on that. We have to do that. Protein, you'll be more full eating protein. But again, when the goal is muscle, we have to have the stimulus, meaning strength training. Sleep matters. Without recovery, right, we are not as able to have the energy, right? We need energy and we need fuel and we need it in the right timing. And movement. I think of movement as a separate category. Movement is just walking. Walking not as exercise, but just as movement. So keep that as a part, like we talked about, after dinner, after meals. And the number one reason women struggle to lose fat in menopause and beyond is due to insulin sensitivity and not having it, right? So being insulin resistant is the number one cause for weight gain after menopause. The number one thing that we focus on in my Menopause health coaching programs is becoming insulin sensitive. And insulin is the main hormone that prevents weight loss. In other words, being insulin resistant. And I explain that, I go through that, I help you understand what that is, and then I explain and help you come up with a structure to remedy this. Because that's the key. Whether you're on a weight loss drug or not, no matter what, you can do it both ways. But that is what we want to get to. And you know what? Plenty of women come in and out. They'll say, went away for a month. I came back. I'm struggling to get back on board. I need some support and accountability to get there. And that's what we do. And then you go back. And sometimes we need those little check-ins, those little reboots. And so I offer coaching around that, right? Just come in, get rebooted, and go back out. So the key is you don't struggle alone in this space, really. I won't do it, and I ask you not to do it because life is short and we deserve to feel amazing. So if you're not feeling amazing today and any of this resonated, please book a call, right? To get yourself back on track. It doesn't have to take forever. It can be quick, especially if you've worked with me before. But certainly there's all levels, right, of coaching that we can go through together. So let's end with this. Let's give you 4 things to try this week. Okay. Number 1, stop eating most of your carbohydrates by themselves. So remember, no naked carbs. Pair them with protein and fiber. Okay, number 2, start your meal with protein and vegetables rather than leading with the carbs, right? Remember, bread basket, end of the meal. If you're out to dinner, ask for it. Okay, number 3, use carbohydrates strategically around your activity, right? Let your carbohydrates fuel and recover. Think fuel, recover around your activity, your exercise, okay? Number 4, take a short walk after your meals, right? Just simple, but do it because it will help regulate your blood sugar. And again, what's the number one hormone that's impacting our weight gain, weight loss issues is insulin. It will help you to become more insulin sensitive. So those are just 4 things that I want you to give a try. Maybe just try one this week, but try it. Start to implement it, right? Step through it, right? We can't wait back here for things to happen out here. We have to actually step into it. So, and maybe stepping into it is booking a call with me this week. If this is something that's been on your mind, you really want to tackle this, I'm here to help you and support you through it. So again, hope this was helpful. And I look forward to hearing from you. If you like this or this was helpful, please subscribe, give a thumbs up. I'll look forward to talking to you again very soon. Bye.